Greetings, ones and ones. Welcome to Ancient Current Rastafari Roots and Culture. Enough respect and love to all. Today I have with me Mama Z Shaman, medicine woman. She provides a blend of scientific and ancestral knowledge to uplift your vibration and calm your spirit. The world is in need of a lot of healing right now. The world needs healing. And I wanted to bring Mama Z onto the show today because I wanted to introduce her to my listeners and people out there who may need help with their healing themselves or loved ones in their families and friends. And so I want to introduce Mama Z. Welcome to Ancient Current, Mama Z Shaman.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, thank you.
Introduce yourself a little bit and start out talking about what a medicine woman means to you.
Okay. Well, I became familiar with Rastafari in about 1981 with a couple wise elders. At that time, I was in my younger years, approaching my 20s. And I was taught about removing the TV and about ITAL food. And I found my way in 1983 into a class called Raw Foods for Reversing Cancer, which just opened up my whole world. I didn't realize that wasn't able to have the comprehension and the reading. I thought, well, I just have a very low intelligence. And the raw foods and the change into the ITAL diet and the removal of the TV and, getting out into nature more and more, which I always loved, brought about a hunger and a thirst for learning more and more, which I've now done for almost 40 adult years next year. So I do science and intuition, and I blend them together.
Beautiful. What is HTMA and what you do with that?
Okay. HTMA is just simply an abbreviation for hair tissue mineral analysis. Now, today we hear so much about, it's my genetics or is it my inflammation? What's causing my autoimmune? I just finished 2 classes at the university here in Wisconsin. One was personality and one was health psychology. And, I didn't know what a personality was. I thought it's just how we describe people overall, but I've gotten a much deeper sense now. Why do we become who we are, how we manifest, how we display to the world, what is our reflection? But moreover, why do we get sick or take the S off? Why do we get ick? Why do we get illness? So the HTMA is simply we're cutting a piece of hair from the very top up here at the crown and the temporal and the occiput, which I can even do with these new 4th set of dreadlocks here. And I can pull them back and go in the mirror and collect a sample from a kit that I order on my website. It goes to a lab of 40 years. I work with what I consider to be the best. It's called Trace Elements Lab, and this is a box of supplements I just got in the mail. I thought I'd save it here. And it provides a 10 to 12 page patient report, which comes via email. So it's such an easy business to do, even with COVID, for me to add on to all of what I offer, is that the person would order it from my website or ask me to order it with or without a consult. And that piece of tissue sample goes in a collection envelope that's marked Trace Elements with prepaid postage to the lab by me. I'm not allowed to deal with the lab independently, but through a practitioner that's approved like myself. So there are doctors and psychologists and people like myself with a great deal of medicine. I'm not a health coach. I've moved way beyond that, who do this service. You are made out of these, and these 4 macro minerals are your calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium, which cause your cells to have protective membranes, which cause you to have energy and metabolism, which functions for your thyroid, which is, part of my publishing my 2nd book, Detox and Heal Your Thyroid. So I can very easily look at the output, which any of my clients can look at the ranges and the graphs. The graphs are easy to read. You're either in the acceptable range or you're outside of that.
Okay.
So very easy to read, comes to your email, the kit comes to your house, you clip the hair in your bathroom. I have clients that don't have hair, so they clip fingernail.
Okay.
Or they clip pubic hair. If they're dyeing their hair, we don't want dyed hair, so we clip pubic hair. So 40 years, lots of official publications. It's owned by Dr. David Watts, who's a PhD. And I'm able to see thyroid hormone, so infertility. I'm able to see blood sugar balance. I'm able to see all of that without diagnosing or practicing medicine under the AMA. It's amazing.
That does sound amazing. So what are some of the specific illnesses or issues you provide guidance for? I know you just brought up thyroid and infertility. Are those the main ones, or what is your scope?
Sure. In the very beginning, when I was in 1983, I worked with people who were looking to lose weight, had obesity, and they had non-IDDM type 2 diabetes. So they had insulin regulation issues, pancreas issues, fatty liver, the more simple issues for me. I worked with cysts, I worked with acne, I worked with hormonal issues. And then I progressed over many decades. It'll be 40 years, 2023. And in 2017 and 2018, I worked with a Rasta brethren's father in the southern state. I worked with people all over the world through Zoom for many, many years, and very professionally, because people don't want to, play around. They're stressed, they're sick, anxious. I get them their link right away. We're on board and we get going in a very positive way.
Great.
So I worked with Parkinson's. I worked with neurodegenerative issues. Dementia is, for example, like autism. It's 100 different illnesses. It is essentially system failure, right? So the first thing I want to do is have my client obtain an HTMA. Now, really quickly, one very important piece is that when you're used to getting a needle in your arm and you get a serum blood test, the blood is just like the caduceus, the two serpents on the entwined AMA medical symbol that we see so often, the caduceus, which is a very old symbol. Those two serpents indicate the blood on one level, and the blood is transporting these elements. So if you've got calf cramps and you wake up in the middle of the night and you're like, oh my gosh, my calves hurt. And the doctor says, well, no, we tested your potassium with your blood test and it's fine because you ate a banana that morning. It's because it's transporting your hair, especially closest to the scalp, is storage. We want to check the storage aspect of these minerals because they make up everything from your heartbeat to your brain to how you will heal from system failure, aka neurodegenerative, how you will be struggling with mental illness, or in my case, with traumatic grief, losing my child. That's why I look the way that I do, and I don't look like I did on my YouTube videos several years ago. So I'm able to work with infertility, endometriosis, PCOS, Parkinson's disease extensively. I had 12 men that I was working with right around the time that my son became very ill, and extensively with thyroid issues of all sorts, right? The world is right now in an upper 90 percentile of having thyroid deficiency, which is why we have respiratory issues. I'll leave it there.
Oh. Yeah. Interesting. So circling back to the hair loss on the top of the head, you brought up how if people are bald, you can do other methods, but also you just mentioned something about that's where like the receptors are, that's where you can do the testing the most. So is there a connection with the baldness for people? And is there a connection with a mineral deficiency or something that's in the body that is your sensor there?
Yes, what I hear are two things that you're asking. Number one is why the head, and that's because the brain is considered to be part of the central part of the central nervous system, the CNS, right? And it feeds down into the spine. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me, which is what I put in my book. The second thing is when a person has either male pattern baldness or it develops other types of baldness or alopecia, specific alopecia. And some people have hirsutism, which they've got extra hair on the side and they think, oh, you're just kind of fuzzy like a peach. And all of those are relative to your metabolism and your ability to methylate. So how you can correct your DNA is methylation. How you can produce energy and distribute the energy and use the energy is your metabolism. Your hair tissue report is going to show me precisely out of 8 types how you're metabolizing. So when you see someone with gray hair, they're in their 20s, 40s, 50s, maybe even their 60s, right? My hair is not dyed. 61 years of age. I was born in 61. Gray hair is always a sign of loss of energy. So it's going to come with stress. So you'll hear the rhetoric, oh, it's a product of genetics. Well, it's a product of inheritance, meaning that mama gave you her minerals. She gave her pattern. So I frequently will work with a lot of families, especially more well-to-do families who go, "Hey, this is really important stuff. We're going to spend 250 per person in our home and get a foundational basis to understand. $250 is nothing for the hour that I spend on an individual's wellness forum on my website." So people think I'm brushing them off sometimes when I'll say, "Start with my website," where it says getting started. You fill out the wellness form with everything you want to, whereas a health coach would typically charge you for the time and take down the information.
Mm-hmm.
So male pattern baldness, I can look at that report. If you do a hair sample on the scalp, it's going to be closest to the brain and the blood-brain barrier blood. So that blood is especially what's filtering out toxins, right? So if a woman's dyeing her hair, using a lot of product, bleaching her hair, we'll go for pubic hair, but it won't be 100%. It'll be slightly less, but it'll give us pretty much the same clear picture.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Now, your website mentions sun forest foods, and that's something that I see on your social media a lot. You have these like delicious, epic pictures of like raw chocolate fudge, raw cookies, and like amazing cakes and all these things. So does this sun forest food, that's what you do with your food business, or tell me about that?
Soon after my son died and I got situated in an apartment, we had to let go of our family home of 20 years as well. So it had to be remodeled and sold during COVID. Right after his death, it was an 11-month window of time. Once I got situated in the apartment, I said, I've got to keep learning and structure myself. And I took a course by a woman online because of the pandemic. And with all my background in raw foods, it was a natural fit. And I became a raw pastry chef. And so whereas I was making these in a much more ital, rudimentary bush style, she had very fancy cakes, and we did make about 60 plus recipes. We made tiramisus and matcha green tea, ceremonial matcha green tea cakes, all raw, no refined sugar. Everything is sweetened with dates or pure maple syrup, not imitation.
Perfect.
And so forest food became the cakes and the raw muffins, and fractal foods, they're two different, became the chocolate with medicinal mushrooms. After her course in 2021, I took a 7-week course with Dr. Christopher Hobbs on medicinal mushrooms. I'll put this here to show you. This is my reference book that I recommend to everyone. It's amazing. And I bought probably about 16 different types of cultivated out of Washington, pristine medicinal mushrooms from reishi to chaga, of course, up here. And a lot of my clients had already brought me chaga, so I got a commercial grinder and started grinding fresh, dark, chaga, full of carbon, and blending it into this completely raw. And then I bought a chocolate refiner and started refining the chocolate into this smooth.
Oh, nice.
And then I found out that a lot of people were getting poisoned, which my son had been. A lot of people didn't realize that their children came in, meaning they were born with a dump from, we call it a maternal dump from mom. And I had dumped toxins into my son back he was born in 95. He would have been 27 here this week. But many, many, many moms were dumping, and it wasn't becoming really patently obvious until when? Until their children were really hitting puberty. And the body's endocrine system needed to kick in, right? So the chocolate was important to me that I was buying. I buy my chocolate from TerraSol. I'm really open about that. It's not a business. I make it just for me because all the farmers markets here told me, well, if you got to bring stuff that's got to be refrigerated, you can't sell it here. And my hope is that I was going to kind of do that in Duluth and bring about this amazing ital medicinal food, and I just kept getting a pushback. So I am actively looking as I finish another degree right now in behavioral neuroscience at UWS, psychology. I'm kind of looking for what's going to be my forever home now that I'm, a childless mother. And, where will I go where people say, we appreciate that food and we appreciate this kind of medicine that looks to the many root causes and not just it's a one size fits all. You don't treat every infection the same way. You don't treat every individual the same way.
Mm-hmm.
I can respect that individual is to say, please just invest a little 250 for your first HTMA and your consult. After that, you'll know how to read it, but I will give you important insights and it will tell you the supplements that you need. Now, the supplements are made by Albion Minerals, so this is not a supplement slinging deal, which I absolutely detest. The person goes to the chiropractor and comes out with $300 worth of crap, you know.
Yeah.
And so for the first 6 years of working with the company, I was like, I'm not going to try to sell any supplements. And then I found myself in complex PTSD and traumatic grief in 2019. And I talked with Dr. Watts, who owns a company. He's an elder to myself. And he said, well, are you taking the blank blank that was recommended right on your report that everyone did? I said, no. I said, and I'm manifesting symptoms of LPR, which are laryngopharyngeal reflux, which means I was full of phlegm. My metabolism shut way down. I was becoming a water bog. My face is still puffy. I don't look like the beautiful person that I looked before. And my radiance, right? Being a happy mom, it affects you. So I started taking it and I was like, oh my God, I've stopped choking. I mean, you know, and so over and over and over now in the last 2 years, I've had clients come back who just did the HTMA and the consult with me, the $250. And they come back and I say, just order the supplements and it tells you right on there, 2 of these in the morning, whatever. So you don't have to guess.
Okay.
But the bottle says just take 1. I said, well, they have to tell you that because of the RDA and the FDA, right?
Yeah.
It's just like the other test that's spectacular on my website. You've got to know what level you need to get back. Okay. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely put links to your website in the comments below. And then also at the end, I'll have you share your information. But one thing I wanted to ask you before we wrap it up is, what is Rastafari to you?
Mm-hmm. Very good question. Rastafari to me has changed over the years. I come from a family that never ever did organized religion at all. It was never spoken of the whole time I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And I mean none of my family. So when I found Rastafari in 1981 through these 2 wise elders, they were in their 70s. This is 1981, and I was in my early 20s. They said, nah, man, you got to get rid of your TV, the television, the tell-a-lie, right?
Yeah.
Because my son's father is from Jamaica and we lived together for years, and I've had 2 other partners in my life. I can speak patois very well, but I just generally don't, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Rastafari for me started off and has returned to, although I've looked at many different iterations of it, is a way of life. And so that way of life is a seed that's planted in my heart, which has to do with clean living, righteous living, so to speak. You know, it has to do with me eating clean, living clean. Of course, I would have a green thumb. I've got these beautiful plants all around me. You know, these are life-giving force.
Mm-hmm.
Rasta is what physics would describe as connecting with your longitudinal wave and going into an implosiveness to expand the human aura, which is why pictures of Mary Magdalene and Jesus have the halo behind them, which is the expanded aura, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who was doing healing medicine, or in my case, I am a shaman, became out as a shaman after age 55, after decades of doing you work as a medicine person first. You know, and a lot of people say, wasn't that culturally misappropriating because you're white? I said, yeah, I am. And there are shamans in Siberia, Korea, and Germany, and all over the world. Credo Mutwa was one of my absolute favorite. He's now also gone from the physical life. But it means that we connect with the ancestral realm, and Rastafari supported that. It supported ancient African roots and culture. They supported ancestral, which is what I learned as a child and what I developed all these years. So Rastafari to me is clean living. It's being very connected with nature. It's being very, open and fluid and trying to maintain a flow state in our life instead of being, controlling and right. And it's very difficult living in, what people call Babylon, in the matrix, in the system. It's very challenging. We see things that, well, why were the opiates introduced in the first place and given to our people so liberally for pain when they're not an acute pain drug? There are other options, right? But
Mhm.
they're latching on to our young people. All you have to do is take a video check on YouTube and look at Kensington, Pennsylvania, or Boston, Massachusetts, and see what's happening to our people. A medicine woman and a shaman in a Rastafari way is going to look and say, how do we, through the microcosm and the macrocosm, how do we find solutions for these problems? This is work that we are not paid to do at all, right? And
Mhm.
it's troubling sometimes to see where the bleached tooth and the dyed hair, you know, and the fake breast and the Botox,
And the
it's,
fake nails and the fake toenails. Like,
I'm like, okay, I don't do nail polish because these are my solar panels. And if everyone needs vitamin D. Well, you're telling everyone to slather on sunscreen and paint their nails and
mhm.
put concealer all over their face, and you're wondering why they don't have vitamin D. Well, you're not going to get vitamin D unless you're circulating one thing, which is retinol, which is a form of vitamin A, and it has to circulate through the body, which is why I walk in nature, which is why I took all the pictures. You're on my personal page. Um, is you need to walk in nature because nature is a healer.
Mhm. Yes, I.
Knows that nature is a healer. On my back is a big Ites Golden Green tattoo, which is not strictly forbidden in Rastafari, is to scar the flesh. Nonetheless, I fell prey to the system. It says I and I in the middle of it, right?
Yeah.
And no weak heart shall enter Zion on the back of my back. So when they turn me over, that's what they're going to see when it's my turn to pass, along with the Ankh coming up, breaking out of stone, which means, I'm a rebel. I'm a warrior in the truest sense. I fight for the people, even though sometimes they don't see it. They just go, why is she so direct? And why is she so aggressive? And I'm like, I'm frustrated, you know? I don't want your children to also have to perish out of order death. It's no fun. And so when you are cracked open, like my tattoo, the Ankh on the back of my neck, coming out of stone, breaking free from stone, um, you come to a place where there's a difference between someone who loves reggae,
Mhm.
who is Rastafari. A Rastafari has what I was taught in 1981, which I'll end with, which is know your movement. And your movement is your daily habits, right? So I
Mhm.
can't just have plants drooping over and dying and all these things going. Like, my movement is that I'm respecting the plants, the animals, my child, my fellow people. Doesn't mean that sometimes I don't get really frustrated, because I do. I just go, oh,
Sure.
when the system launches certain operations, I have a problem with that. And I try to inform people 53% of our people die from respiratory distress, infections, distress, illness, etc. Okay. Those are resulting from metabolic issues that can be defined, identified on your HTMA painlessly, affordably, and easily to your mailbox, to mine, to the lab. And I didn't do it when my son was 18 months old, but I took a piece of his hair when he was 18 months old, because Dr. Watts said, after my son died, it's a shame you didn't have a hair sample from when he was a baby, his first haircut. And I said, I do. Now, we can't take it if it's wrapped in plastic or foil because you contaminate it. But I'd happened to put it in a paper envelope along with baby teeth in an Ice Golden Green jar,
Mm.
because I heard the ancestors say, hold on to this. I sent it in, and my 18-month-old child's lead elevation levels were all the way to the top of the report.
Wow.
So here he was, identified as very gifted, which I don't subscribe to that language. I say we develop. Everyone can become very intellectually, and high in intelligence. But if you could identify those toxicities, whether they're heavy metals or toxic elements, they'll be identified on the chart. You can save someone the grief. You can save and prevent the problems from happening in the first place.
Mm.
It's just, if I, at that time, when in 1997, I said, are you kidding me? That sounds like a big hoax. I'm going to send my hair sample in and they're going to tell me, I've since learned,
Mhm.
learned. And I've put unbelievable study into learning what all this provides, so that consult opens that up and we do a half an hour session on Zoom or on Facebook Messenger. Just like this, but I go right into what are your questions first, and here's some key points. And it's phenomenal. Yeah. Thank you.
Give thanks. You've been tuned in to Ancient Current Rastafari Roots and Culture. I've had on the show today Mama Z Shaman. She can be reached at her website, mamazshaman.com. Reach out to her. That's mamazshaman.com. Again, you've been tuned in to Ancient Current. My name is Sheila Ryan. I give thanks for your time, Mama Z, and you still are radiant. Blessed love to all ones and ones. Much respect and healing for the world.